Great Scott, and I do mean Great Scott. U.S. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from the great state of South Carolina, joins us now to talk about the election, what's at stake, and why it is so critical. Wisconsin voters send Tony Evers and Mandela Barnes packing. Sir, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, truly for being on the show. And I will tell you what, taking care of business is making sure that Ron Johnson and Brian Style gets across the finish line first, because that's taking care of business for Wisconsin, but it's also taking care of business for the great United States of America.
Well, you no doubt about that, and so much is at stake. I know that you have been a very strong voice for conservatives in Wisconsin. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and what you've been up to in terms of getting the message out there about truly what is at stake in November.
You know, I'll tell you, Matt, I've spent the last several weeks traveling the country trying to make sure that every single state where we are competitive, including Wisconsin, we win our races, because if we win our races, we get to control the future of this country. The Republican Party must win in Wisconsin. We have a lot of other states that are competitive. We're going to roll the dice, and I think we're going to come up with lucky sevens, to be honest with you. I am excited about where we are, and I look forward to the future. Ron Johnson, without any question, is a fantastic candidate. If you believe in lowering inflation, if you believe in taking the reins out of the Biden administration's hand, Ron Johnson is the person to help us to get back the control and win the majority in the Senate. It is an absolute necessity, and I'm traveling the country and coming to Wisconsin to make sure that he has the best odds possible. I want to tell his story, because sometimes it's helpful for someone else to blow your horn for you, because Ron Johnson has done a really good job representing Wisconsin, but he also has done a great job representing our country.
Well, you've worked alongside Senator Ron Johnson. We're talking now with U.S. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from the great state of South Carolina. You know, you've worked with Senator Johnson for a good long time now. You can give us a little perspective that, unfortunately, a lazy or willful mainstream media refuses to. They're all in, serving basically as public relations operators for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin and the national DNC. What's the real Ron Johnson that's not being reported by, say, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel or the Washington Post?
Yeah, let me tell you something that's really important to know about Ron John, as I like to call him, Matt. The truth is that Milwaukee has been seen around the country as one of the homes for school choice. We saw a lot of success stories around the school choice issue start and populate the nation from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I sat in a Washington, D.C. Catholic school invited by Ron Johnson because he felt that the issue of choice was so important, that the passion that parents have for their kids needed to be rewarded by making sure that the money follows the child. He put together a forum on school choice. Why they don't report that in Milwaukee, I'll never know. Why they make him out to be someone that he's not, I can't understand. But what I will tell you, the parents in that room talking about the gift of quality education, excited about the chance given to all of the parents at that forum to speak up for their kids, they love Ron Johnson putting that together. I will tell you that he's a strong businessman. He understands signing the front of the paycheck and not just the back. He's a person who is considerate, conscientious, but he fights for the little guy because he understands quality education, free market are two pillars of the American dream.
Mm-hmm. I think anybody who's seen the Joseph Project in action can certainly speak to that and understand that about U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, that he stands up for the little person. And that is not the picture that you get certainly from most of the mainstream media. Because, and I can answer the question, why on earth would they paint this guy in such a different light? Because they hate him. They hate him, they hate you, they hate anybody who has an R behind their name and has espouses conservative values, because it goes against the big government road to socialism path that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the rest of the Democrats in leadership want to take us on. And you see the results of this. Senator, you see the results of this. I'm looking at the big board right now, 506 points down on the Dow. Why is that? Because we have a Federal Reserve that is aggressively trying to fix Joe Biden's inflation problem. These are real life little guy problems that we're talking about here.
1,000%, Matt. But what you just said is so important. I hope your listeners did not miss it. You understand that the problem of high inflation was avoidable. President Biden poured gasoline on a raging fire, and it exploded. He took, for 17 months in a row now, he has taken inflation so much higher than wage growth that the average Wisconsinite has lost spending power. For the last 8 months, under the Biden administration, for the last 6 months, inflation has been over 8%. Why? Because President Biden, supported by his party, decided to pass another $739 billion of spending that was preceded by $1.9 trillion and then $1.2 trillion, not to even mention $4 trillion annual appropriation. We are drowning in a sea of inflation caused by overspending.
Yep, no doubt about it. And we and our grandchildren and their grandchildren are going to be paying for those bad decisions. U.S. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from the great state of South Carolina, with us just for a couple more minutes. I wanted to get to some important legislation that you have introduced and really pushed for, because we're talking about an era in our lifetime, Senator, I didn't think would come, where the educrats, the education establishment, has basically led a coup against parental rights. And I'm not saying that's happening in all schools, but too many schools. And the product that we're getting shows it in our test scores on real learning, real skills in America today. And all of that traditional learning, math, English, spelling, sciences, you name it, traditional sciences, they're being sacrificed at the altar of wokeness. You have some legislation that aims to restore parental rights. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Matt, you are a man of common sense with a very strong compass. How about common sense being parents love their children more than anybody else, and parents know what's most important for their children's future than a big labor union or a bureaucrat in the Department of Education. So my legislation is very simple. It says follow the law. You cannot indoctrinate our children. You must educate our children. You cannot change anything about our kids, pronouns, names, or anything without their parents' permission. Literally, all my legislation does is it restores the appropriate position of a parent in their child's life in the eyes of the Department of Education. Very simple. Parents, that's who we want making decisions for their children.
How about that? Some common sense. Would love to see that return back into, well, most walks of life in America today, but particularly, most vitally, our education system across the country. One final point for you. You know, you're going around, you're campaigning hard. You are telling the stories of some really good conservatives out there. We need to tell your story, too, and I can't help but think to myself, Senator Tim Scott, you are running against a real nut. I don't know how else to put it. But even her fellow Democrats have said to your opponent, State Representative Crystal Matthews, please get out of the race. You're embarrassing us with all of these horrible things that you have said and that you have done. How do you stand up against the challenges of someone who is constantly talking about division in America as opposed to getting people together to do things that will heal America?
Well, Matt, you bring up a very good point. You made me laugh out loud, literally laugh out loud there, because I couldn't hold it in. The truth is that she and I have two very different visions of America. My vision of America is that we are better together. She literally insulted African Americans, and then she went and insulted white South Carolinians. The truth about her campaign versus my campaign, they could not be more different. I literally spend time watching America evolve in the right direction. That the evolution of the Southern heart and the American heart can be seen by who represents us. We as Americans judge people on the content of their character, not the color of the skin. And for some reason, voices on the left, from South Carolina to the nation's capital, there's a bigotry woven into their statements that are un-American. And I won't even mention her name, because what I want people to remember about our show is why we must elect people like Ron Johnson, and why having you, even though you're just filling in today, but having you on the radio today is so important, that people hear the truth, that they hear passion for our nation, compassion for our people, but the truth about our legislators, especially Ron Johnson. But the woman running against me, who happens to be an African American, who has said the most incredible things about other Americans, white ones and black ones, it's just out of step with who we are and where we're going. I thank God Almighty I'm an American.
Yeah. No doubt. Taking a page, your opponent from the Joe Biden dividing America script, for sure. Hey, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I hope we get a chance to talk again. I'm sure we'll meet up down the road, as you're one of the hardest working people in this election cycle right now. There's simply no doubt about that. U.S. Senator Tim Scott, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. God bless you. Keep doing what you do.
You bet.